I'm feeling like a bit of a roving reporter because here I am in Edinburgh and hopefully we're going to get Tony Bennett in Pinehurst. Tony Bennett is the chief exec or president of Edgar, and he was the one that persuaded me when I retired from the European Tour to come on board and take on this small little role. It's nothing, it'll take just to do with disability golf. But he's an inspirational leader. He's not on yet, so I can say. And I think what I'm going to say, if I forget to say, if anyone's interested in this sort of work, and there's this amazing opportunity because things are moving really fast, and I really think, as you'll see from my evangelical talk that's coming up next, that I think we've really got something that's going to move golf forwards. Is that okay? Have we got Tony yet in Pinehurst? No? Well, as any good presenter, I shall carry on regardless. I'm going to describe, were many people there at the talk last night? Anyone not there at the talk last night? Okay, so quite a few, because I'm going to repeat one or two things. I hope that that's going to be okay. I'm going to talk about the context for golf for players with disability. I'm going to talk about who can play, because I want you as ambassadors to get out there and to encourage people to play, and really explain where we've got to with this whole project. And I'm going to share some of the challenges that we have and try and leave some time for questions at the end. I've looked at my watch. The context, as I explained last night, 15% of the population do have a disability. There are 1.3 million golfers with disability embedded in the game, and this is work that was done last year by SMS. So golfers, if we think of golfers, 66 million golfers, golfers with disability are underrepresented. And people with this disability are less active and therefore more prone to all the illnesses and mentioned in earlier talks today. So, golf has been shown to be a health-enhancing physical activity. Golf is an ideal sport for players with disabilities. As I explained last night, the ball is still. People with disability take time to prepare. If they get time to prepare, they can do great things. And I'm not just talking about people with physical disability. I'm talking about people with some of the intellectual impairment and neurodevelopmental disorders. People with autism. Yes, we do include those people. Yeah, we go beyond the IPC list of 10 categories because those people have great difficulty playing golf. They also have great difficulty rolling up to a golf club and saying, I want to play golf. They need time. They don't like to be tackled. They don't like physical contact. And golf is an ideal sport. So, and this is just a personal preference, but I think it's gaining some traction. Golf is golf. I don't want people to go wrong and say, I'm in paragolf. Well, what does that mean? That suggests that there's some difference. Golf is golf. With our playing handicap system, we can all play together. I'll say no more on that. And I'm not going to talk about the commercial opportunity, but when I'm talking to accountants or to other groups, I mention the fact that there's probably 300,000. If we just deal with 50% of people that could be playing golf, using the penetration of golf in the able-bodied game, there's probably 300,000 players in Europe that could be playing and spending their money on golf. Up until the last few years, golf has had a disparate group of organizations, some very wealthy military groups that do their own thing and look after the members. That's absolutely fine. And lots of small groups, usually with players with similar disabilities getting together, which is fine. But if we're going to develop it and make it more available to the masses, that's not going to work. And I think this is the difference that Tony Bennett and others have done. They've signed up. Oh, there he is. Oh, my goodness. Tony, I've already sent some of this. I feel like a real roaming reporter now. Tony, can you just move to the right? Because my slides have got to show on the screen as well. Thank you.
I think that...
Tony, just talk to us, just so that I know you're there.
Yes, I'm here, Roger.
Okay,
yeah,
fine. Okay, I've now got to I've now got to modify my talk slightly. who can play the game? Because I think, you know, many of you will be thinking, well, you know, we've just seen Wimbledon, we've seen tennis, you know, we've seen people with disability in tennis. Well, we've seen people in wheelchairs at tennis. And I hadn't realized that there are 10 categories that the IPC use, and there they are on the right. I'm not going to go through them. But most sports have just sort of picked out the ones they think they can do good for. And to be absolutely frank, we also did the same with the Paralympic bid about 7 or 8 years ago, just picked out people with amputations. But it doesn't really give the best picture. We make available golf in all 10 categories. And we have a minimum level of impairment, not really disability, in each of those groups, which was developed by consensus. I'll explain the challenges of that later. But we don't discard those people that don't actually make that standard within those groups. You know, we don't say, oh, sorry, you don't reach the standard, go and find another sport. We say that you can play in our tournaments, but you don't accrue world ranking points. World ranking points, yes, we got world ranking points, the same system as in the amateur world, with the RNA and the USGA coming together and doing the same maths and creating a world ranking points. So you don't get those, and you might say, well, what about other conditions? Yeah, every country has a list of conditions that they consider as a disability. And we don't want to turn those people away either. Anyone that has difficulty at rolling up to a golf club and saying, I want to play golf, we want to make it easy. We've heard that's a very important factor. Access conditional. Those for conditions that aren't on the list, the 10 list of eligible conditions with the IPC. So it's a pretty inclusive group. At the elite end, we now have 7 events this year on the DP World Tour. That's the old European Tour. Players playing on the same course, in the same week, using the same facilities, the same tees as the professional players. That's sort of kind of cool, isn't it, really? And Tony is at the US Adaptive Open this year. There's the first international open happening at Pinehurst, and that's where he's talking to us from. We have European Team Championships and over 60 world ranking events in 5 continents. So it has grown quite enormously. It was a bit slow during COVID, but it's come back quite fast. And they're the sort of countries, you know, all across, mainly across Europe, but Australia is very strong, New Zealand, South Africa. You can see there's a wide group of players. And as I just emphasized, it's not about the elite, but it is important. Juan Postigo, who is a player that plays on one leg, he was playing in the Open, in an event early in the week of the Open, playing with the likes of Tom Watson and the legends of the game, four players with disability. He took at least half an hour to get off the golf course because he was almost mobbed by people in wonderment, because this guy with one leg and no prosthesis hits the ball 300 yards and accurately. So we want these people to be up there, to normalize golf for people with disability so that people can roll up to their local golf club and play. This is really just showing that we've now got 2,300 players signed up. I'll explain a little bit more about that. 34 federations. I've talked about that before. An online application form, so it's easy and we get the information and we don't lose players. World rankings, as I've said, which are written there. But I know that like me, many of you will be thinking, oh, well, it'll all be the amputees, low limb amputees at the top of the world rankings. This is an analysis of players in the world rankings. The countries and the conditions there, and the conditions, that's using a coding system within our system, but AMP is amputees. So there are amputees, obviously, there, but N is neurological, and there's neurological weakness, there's athetosis, there's people with short stature, with LL, limb length deficiency. A huge variety of players, and II, intellectual impairment. And not just the Paralympic people with low IQ, we're talking about people with Down syndrome, we're talking about other complex needs, and also people with ASD, autism, who need to be helped to be underrepresented playing golf. Trying to move that on. There it is. So EDGAR, European Disabled, that's what it used to be, European Disabled Golf Association. It's really the agency that helps the federations, the 34 that have signed up, to actually get things in place, to run tournaments, to have national eligibility assessors to go out and be able to assess players, to look at their eligibility, and to be the sort of conduit with a central team at the IGF, because eventually the IGF will take over international events, the WR40D standard, all the stuff that international federations do, and we'll have that central team to interact with the national federation. So in the end, EDGAR is going to sort of move away. It won't be there forever, but it's facilitating the change that's needed. And they have development programs. We want eligibility and development, as I say, programs. Just again, trying to move one forward. So what are the challenges? These things are never straightforward, as we know. I inherited a system. We were basically a European organization, what I've called a cottage industry, not disrespectfully, because it ran a small organization in Holland. We've now had to become a sort of international, especially now the Americans have got this major over in their country. We've needed to become a more robust international organization. We based the eligibility standard, the minimum level of disability in those 10 categories, we based it on consensus. And that's worked pretty well. But we know that that's not going to stand up to scrutiny over time. And that's where we want the scientific support to actually test whether those assumptions we've made on range of movement, muscular weakness in certain patterns, whether that actually is the right basis to do it. And what we're hoping and what the Paralympic bid is all about is to have a multi-disability team made up of people with a variety of conditions, not just the obvious ones, not just the successful ones, although, as you've seen in the top 10, they're not actually all together. And we need to understand the issues of players playing golf, because we're going to be encouraging players to play more golf, and that's fine, but we have, and a bit like we were on the European Tour sort of 15, 20 years ago, we had no idea what the issues were with golfers in that situation. And we need to understand how people play golf. How do they adapt to be able to hit that ball in the right direction and eventually get it into the hole? And again, that's something that as a result, we've set up the EDGAR Research Group. With some eminent people from Chicago. We've got support from our colleagues at the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab. One of their members is going to be here talking about arthritis this afternoon. And other scientists to try and actually sort that one out. More women needed. I meant to point out where we looked at the top 10, because this is a mixed top world rankings, that in the top 15, 20 there was only one woman. And if we were to hold, I fear that if we were to hold a Paralympics next year, it would be difficult to get teams, mixed teams together, because that's certainly the aim. So the message is more women needed. Training of eligibility assessors. Now that it's not just in Europe and just people from the locality, we've got to make sure that the interpretation is the same across the world. So the training of eligibility assessors is important. By the way, we call them classifiers because what we're doing is just seeing whether people actually reach the standards. So we call them eligibility assessors. So we've teamed up again with, as an academic partner, Shirley Ryan Ability Lab in Chicago, who are helping us do an online education program, which will hopefully provide us with eligibility assessors who will interpret things in a similar way. We're awaiting the decision on the Paralympic bid. As I say, multi-impairment team, that's what we would aim for. And we're looking forward to more international events. I'm looking to my colleagues from the RNA here. No, not here. He's heard this talk before. So in conclusion, golf for players with disabilities is growing very, very fast. The Mulligan video, and I'm not sure whether people have seen it, we've had a professional person, film maker, a volunteer, who has produced a film called Mulligan, which goes through the sort of case histories of a range of players with different disabilities. It's quite moving. It got onto the got onto the Golf Channel in the States. In fact, it got onto channels which had sort of subscribers up to 166 million people. So quite a lot of people have seen it. It is available also on YouTube if you actually Google it. And we got 10 broadcasters who took that on as well. So the message is getting out there. But of course, you know, if I ask, you know, how many people have seen Mulligan, I know there was one nodding in this room. I'm not sure people have, but it is quite moving, and it's worth watching. Fiona, I can see Fiona at the back of the room there, and I've said that golf is supporting golf for players with disabilities, the Global Action Plan on physical activity, because what we're trying to do is to increase the base by 300,000 people with disability worldwide over the next 10 years. But I'm looking at you, and I'll talk to you perhaps more after the session. There's a commercial opportunity, as I've suggested, but that's not quite so important in this group, but I think it is important. And I think we've got an opportunity to show golf to be, in this respect at least, the most inclusive sport. Thank you very much. That's one Prestigo with the one leg that the lad can hit it 300 yards. Can we just have Tony back on the... He's still smiling, so I haven't perhaps said anything I shouldn't have done. But Tony, can you tell us what you're doing now, but what's the atmosphere like in Pinehurst? Sound like a real reporter now, don't I?
You certainly do, and Roger, you did a great job there, so thank you very much for that, and thank you for taking the time to come to the conference. And I think from what I've just heard, Roger, you gave a great overview there. Typically on time, the greenkeeper's come out and is now cutting the green behind me, so that's just the way that it goes. So if you get a little bit of noise, I apologise for that. No, the atmosphere here is great. It's pretty hot here, pretty steamy as you would imagine. It's Pinehurst, it's North Carolina at this time of the year. It's 30 plus degrees and 80 odd degrees humidity. So yeah.
Okay.
But I've still got my sweater on.
Okay, excellent. Can we, Tony? We're relatively short of time, but while we've got you on the line, Mr. Chair, are there any questions of Tony or myself while we're here? Wade.
I'd just like Tony to comment on how is this playing out and the excitement around the U.S. Adaptive Open, and what do you expect to happen afterwards in the weeks and months after the Adaptive Open? How will that accelerate this field?
Okay, well, I think I got most of that question. So yeah, how is it playing out? Well, look, this has been in plan for, I would say, around about 5 years, thereabouts. We certainly sat down with the USGA early days and sort of said to them that, look, you need a showcase event that people can gravitate to and that will set the standard. And of course, very typically with the USGA, the staging of the event looks fantastic. Golf course couldn't be better. And of course, there's a lot of players here that are very happy to be here and playing. And I'm pretty sure that I think I'm right in saying there's 90 or 96 players, probably 96 players that are playing. And every one of them is grateful to the USGA for actually, sort of getting off the fence and putting their position straight forward that this is a game for everybody and this sits exactly where it should do alongside all the other national championships. So from that respect, I think it's really good. And I think what we'll see here in the US is very much what we've seen in other parts of the world that have perhaps been a little bit further ahead in their development, in so much that they brought the events inside of other tournaments that they do. So Australia is a good example of that. I heard Roger speak earlier about the DP World Tour. And we have lots of international championships across Europe and across other parts of the world, South Africa, into South America, across into Oceania. So we have these championships that are being played, and now the USGA has joined in on that. So I think that's a really good sign. And I'm sure that within the next 3 months, you'll see a kind of a cascade effect. And what normally happens is that, when you see what's going on at the top level, then you'll have other people that will start to develop their own tournaments. And this might be statewide, or it might be regional wide, or even county wide that they do that. And there'll be more opportunities for people to play good golf close to their home. And I suppose that was one of the driving forces when we first got started, is that we wanted people to be able to play world-class events close to home. Because remembering there's a massive difference between what we do and what things like the DP World Tour do, or last week we had a player playing in an LET event, and in a couple of weeks' time, we've got 8 players playing in an LET event. So the difference is, of course, is that these are not professionals. Most of them are, they've got their jobs to go to, they've got family commitments, they get 2 or 3 weeks holiday a year, and, they don't get paid to do this. So we don't want those players, from a sustainability standpoint, to have to travel the world and try and get ranking points so they can get into some of these big events. We want them to be able to play world-class events close to home. So the ranking system allows us to do that. And I think that this is a real new dawn for G4D out here in America. I think I'm not too sure about the title Adaptive Open. If I'm totally honest, I think that we play a game here, and Roger alluded to it earlier, is that if we take the continuum of sports inclusion, we'd start maybe on the left-hand side with a discrete sport, which is specifically for people with disability, or maybe it's played very much like Roger mentioned earlier, which would be wheelchair tennis. So not necessarily would you be a wheelchair user all of your life, but you would be a wheelchair user to play in wheelchair tennis. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got an inclusive sport. And so we basically play an inclusive sport with some modified rules. And we'll see very soon that the modifications of the rules for golfers with disability will be just put into the overall rule book. So that will be Rule 25, we hope. That should be announced hopefully reasonably soon.
Tony?
In which case 90% are going to be inclusive.
Great. Tony, we're going to need to move on, but thanks ever so much for getting up early and giving us the atmosphere over at Pinehurst. We've got much warmer weather here, but I'll tell you about that another day. Thanks very much indeed.
For the rest of the day.
Thanks, Tony.